Hey guys, this is Connor at Conquest Human Performance, and today I want to talk a little bit about why I have many of my clients do some kind of food journaling or food tracking, macro tracking, and indirectly, therefore, calorie tracking. In almost every case, when I start working with someone and looking at their nutrition, for me, tracking macros or tracking calories or food journaling. Um, it's a very direct process to understand how much food you can consume kind of safely while hitting your goals, that kind of thing. But there are hidden benefits there that a lot of people overlook, but I think that they may be the most important part of it. And this is why I kind of recommend that people make periodic returns to tracking or journaling, even if it's just a week or two every 3 to 6 months. If you just pick a week and you kind of track your food intake, just kind of see where you are, it can be tremendously valuable. The reason I think this works is that it's an awareness exercise as much as anything else. So if I immediately start writing down everything that I'm eating throughout the day, and my intention is not to change what I'm eating throughout the day when I'm tracking, my intention is just to eat as I normally would, track what I'm eating, figure out how many calories, how many proteins, fats, and carbs are contained in those foods. That's all well and good. But the second you decide that you're going to do this tracking, you become hyper aware of the foods that you're putting in your body, how much of those foods you're eating, how regular you're eating them, whether or not there are better alternatives than those foods that you're eating. So in this regard, I find that the awareness is almost as valuable as figuring out specific number targets to hit. And I find this because if you're kind of going through habits all day, every day that you've done for so long, you make your sandwiches the same way, you make your dinner the same way, you add the same things to your foods, the same butters and salt and whatever else, you are kind of stuck in those behaviors and you're not consciously aware of them. You just kind of go through the motions, do it. This is the way I've been doing it for months or years or whatever. And you're not thinking about the actual process, the actual amount that you're putting in, the actual content you're putting in quite as much, which is okay. I mean, that is always the end goal, is to get to the point where you can do that without thinking about it, without consciously having to decide how much you're eating. Just do it more intuitively. And still do something or eat the right amount, eat the right foods that are going to lead to your goals. But a lot of people aren't necessarily ready for that. So when you start tracking, you break that cycle. Now, when you make your sandwiches or you're making your meal or whatever, you're adding things to your meal, you're going to be aware of how much you're adding and what exactly the expectations are from adding that. I mean, if you were adding a tablespoon of butter every time you consume whatever the dish is, just as an extra source of flavor, you're going to second guess that. You're going to start thinking, is it really worth those calories to add it to my meal? Am I getting enough flavor out of it to justify those calories? And that's a very worthwhile consideration. Maybe you end up deciding that the butter is worthwhile and that you still want to keep it in your diet, and that's perfectly fine. But now you're aware of what you're doing. So that awareness is what we're really after. And when I start working with someone, I'd have them track for 3 to 7 days, depending on the situation, just so I get an idea of what they're doing. In the event that we decide that tracking macronutrients through paper and pencil or an app like MyFitnessPal, and tracking macros, that's protein, fats, and carbs, by the way, if you're not aware. But if we decide to do that moving forward, if we decide that's the best option, now we have a baseline. Now I know kind of what you do every day. It's going to be modified a little bit. I know what you do every day. I know what your habits are and kind of when you like to eat and what you like to eat and what foods you prefer and what foods you go to because you have to eat them. All valuable information. But more than anything, it brings your awareness to what you're doing. And oftentimes when we do this initial tracking period, it's great for me because I don't have to go out of my way to say, here are some ways you can improve. Certainly I'll get that information and I'll be able to help people by giving them some direction. But in many, many cases, the most important things to change right off the bat, the person will be aware of on their own. When they start to track, they do their journaling and they find I'm consuming X amount of protein a day and X amount of fat per day. And I'm getting a whole bunch of fat from this food source, which is totally unnecessary. It's just something I do, some mindless eating that I do every day. You become aware of it right away, and you can immediately see it pop out to you in your journal or on MyFitnessPal, and then you can decide, is that worthwhile? If that is that the thing that's holding back my progress, is that going to be the easiest way for me to change my diet to feed into progress? And if that's the case, then it's an easy fix. And many times the people that I'm working with are going to find that before I even have to say anything. So if you don't currently track, you don't use MyFitnessPal or paper and pencil, that kind of thing, that's perfectly fine too. If it's working for you, then by all means continue. But if you want a little more insight into what you do eat, or you're trying to clean up your eating, a lot of people say, I'm trying to clean up my eating. I highly recommend tracking or journaling. And you can make this as complex or as simple as you'd like. Something like MyFitnessPal is a little more detail oriented. You're going to get very specific amounts. You can weigh your food if you really want the exact amounts. But for most people, I think you're going to be okay using a whiteboard, using just a dollar store notepad and a pen, and just writing down protein, fats, carbs at the top, and tracking sandwich, this amount, this amount, this amount. You can look up everything on either the nutrition label or online very easily, and just getting an idea of what you're doing every day. Keep this going for a few days. See if you find some interesting insights, and I'm sure some things are going to jump out to you right away. And if you have fitness goals that you're working towards, if you are trying to lose weight or you're training for a competition or whatever it may be, just make note and decide if this is something that you can just kind of consciously change in your diet without tracking moving forward. That's great. Or if it's warranted to kind of keep tracking for a little while longer and see if you can consciously change those proteins, fats, carbs, those numbers, and that extra source of feedback might be invaluable to you. So there is some magic involved in tracking and in journaling for nutrition, but I think a big part of that magic is the awareness that you get. And certainly when you hire a coach, you're kind of paying for like a second source of awareness and looking at the journal, a second source of insight on that same information. But much of the time, you're going to be able to find things jumping out at you right away if you're consistent and if you're honest with your tracking. And you don't need to do it all the time. If this is just a check-in every few months to make sure you're on track, that's excellent. That's a good way to do it. I'm currently doing that myself. I've been maintaining a good body weight myself for 3 or 4 months now, without any tracking of any kind. And I'm just taking a little time to look into how much I'm eating and where that's coming from, and see if there's anything to improve, because habits creep up. Good habits and bad habits kind of work their way in subconsciously. So I want to be aware of everything that's kind of going on there and see if there are any ways I can make my own diet better, more enjoyable, more catered to my own goals, see if it can help me in the gym, etc., etc. So try it out. Write some proteins, fats, and carbs down on a notepad. Play around with it. And if you want feedback, ask someone else to take a look at it. You can certainly send a message to me on wherever you're seeing this, Facebook, YouTube, whatever. If you want a little feedback, then I'm happy to take a quick look. But get some feedback, become aware of what you're doing every day, and adjust from there. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you want more videos like this, and I'll talk to you guys again soon.